Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Terry, and today I'm going to show you how to remove the intake manifold from your BMW Z3, or if you have an M54 or M52 TU6, like straight 6 engine, this video is for you. All right, my friends, so this is a pretty major project to have to, undergo. So I'm gonna be real. If you're planning on doing this kind of stuff, if this is your daily driver vehicle, make sure you plan ahead to have some downtime, because this could take at least 4 hours just to do the disassembly of all of the components to get the intake off. So just plan ahead, and then that's not counting the labor of doing any repairs you got planned, anything that might go wrong and break that you didn't have planned, and then of course the reassembly. So for a project like this, give yourself at least 2 to 3 days before you get started on it. I'm doing a cooling system refresh after my clutch fan broke and destroyed some stuff. Got all that replaced. But there are some water pipes underneath the intake manifold that are part of the cooling system that also have a tendency to become quite frail, and they fall apart quite easily because they are plastic. So I want to swap those out. So in order for me to do that, I got to remove the intake manifold. So let's go ahead and get started and show you how to go about doing this. Now, I had already had all of my coolant drained because, well, most of it had leaked out when my water pump got damaged. So I had to go ahead and I added some distilled water, because there is going to be a moment where I'm going to need to attempt to start the engine. And I just want to make sure that if the car does start and I have to let it idle for a bit, there's no chance of it overheating. So what we need to do is, first, you're going to go over to your fuse box. Locate that in your car, and then there'll be this little tool. Hopefully yours is still in there. There'll be a little tool to help you pull them out. We want to actually look for anything that has to do with the fuel pump. And right there, fuel pump is 13 and 18. So let's go ahead, and then of course there's a little thing here, so I know 13 and 18 are in the second group, which would be in this group here. It starts with 11, 12, so 13 is this 5, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 18 is this blue one. So this one, this 5, and then this blue one here, that would be my 13 and my 18. So let me go ahead and pull those out. All right, there's one. That's my 13. And then the blue one here is my 18. And there we got that. All right, those have been removed. Now the reason why you want to remove these is because part of the disassembly process is we're going to have to remove the fuel rail and the fuel injectors. So you don't want a lot of high pressure in the system to where you're going to have a lot of fuel coming out when you get to that point. So we've disconnected the fuel pump. I got distilled water in my system so I don't overheat. I'm going to attempt to start the car. Now, one of two things are going to happen. Either it's not going to start at all and we're already good to go, or it's going to start, in which case you just let it idle until it starves itself of fuel, and then it will stall. Once it stalls, attempt to start it a second time. Make sure it does not start. If it does not start, then this step is done. You can move on to the next step. All right, let's see if mine starts. And it doesn't. Perfect. So that means the pressure should be low enough to where we won't have to worry about that issue. So the next step is to disconnect the negative terminal on the battery. Okay, I'm back by my battery. We're going to remove the negative terminal. I'm just using the tools that came with BMW since it's back here. and that'll do the trick. Whoop! Screwdriver handle flew off. Get that off. There we go. And then once that negative is off, I'm going to slip the battery mat in between. This way, there's no chance of it reconnecting itself. So put something, make sure you put it out of the way so you don't want it to slip and reconnect and then you get zapped. All right, so step complete. All right, the next step that I'm going to take is I'm going to disconnect the positive terminal for the battery jump location right here, because this actually goes inside the intake. So I'm going to need to be able to get access to that. So let's go ahead and take that off. And you're going to need a 19mm wrench to loosen this, and be careful because it's just plastic pieces. So I'm going to need 2 hands so I don't snap any plastic. All right, it looks like if you snap this little cover off behind it, all this is in the way, of course, but if you can see there's another nut right down there. So you probably got to put 1 wrench on that one. So have 1 wrench on this one, and you probably got to loosen this one. All right, so in order for me to do that, I got to take off this weather stripping right here. And then I can pull this. Looks like this just kind of unsnaps. So let me get a little pick tool. All right, so I get a little pick tool, kind of get that to pop up, and then get it to pop up on this side. Using my pick tool, I went around and got all the clips. There's 3 on the inside and 3 on the outside. And then this little piece comes right off. And now I can try to pull this up. All right, I think I might have to take this little box off here too. Let me get a screwdriver. Get yourself a Phillips screwdriver. There's a few screws in here. Doesn't look like they come out, they just get loose. This we'll find out as I get further into this. There we go. So then it just pulls up. Careful, there is a wire attached in here. There we go. Looks like it's a gasket. All right, that's keeping all that stuff dry. All right, so once you remove that cover, this is what it looks like inside here. Now I can pull this electrical loose. Carefully here. And they're nice and snug. There we go. Now I'm able to move that aside. So now I can finally deal with this cap here, possibly. It's got to have another clip on it somewhere. All right, so I went ahead and I got my little hook tool, the one that kind of has that little bit of a twist to it. Now I was able, there's another clip down on the side. I was able to get it down and twist it. And then that was able to pop the little cover right off. All right, now we have this nut in the back exposed. So now we should be able to loosen this. So let's try this again. All right, so this one's a 19mm and this one is a 13mm. Wow, that is crazy tight. And this is so flimsy that I'm worried about bending it. Got it. Just be very careful not to break this. And now that pulls right out like that. Beautiful. Ideally, it would have been nice to just get this part off, but I couldn't get that loose. And I didn't want to risk breaking it, so I did it this other way. If you're able to just get this off without going through this disassembly process, power to you. All right, I'm going to kind of tuck some of these parts back so that way I don't misplace anything. And I'll meet you over on the other side. Now that we have everything done that we need to do on that side, Now we'll be pretty much just staying on this side of the car. So the next part, which is probably the easiest outside of taking the engine cover off, is getting rid of the air box and getting your air intake taken out. So let's go ahead and do that. So the air box is easy. It's just held in by one nut, at least mine is. So you go ahead and take off whatever is holding in your air box. And then be careful of your overflow hose right here. Don't break that. Twist this out. Go ahead and get rid of your clamp where your MAF sensor is. And we're going to work our way down to the throttle body. Alright, so all I should need is a 10mm to get that off. I no longer have a 10mm short socket. I only have my two deep sockets. My short one got stripped out, so I use a handy dandy wrench. Whoop, and then I just dropped that, but what am I reaching in there for? I have a magnet. There we go. Don't drop it. Alright, now I'll be able to slip that loose, and then what I'm going to do is just lift up a little bit. I'm going to put that nut right back on so I don't lose it. So when I come back to putting things together, everything is with what it came off of. Alright, now I'll need to get a screwdriver to get that clamp off. After you loosen the clamp, there's also little brackets on the side. You just take your screwdriver and you just pop them right out. There, we got it. Alright, so then you just pop those two little clips right there, and then the air box will be able to separate from your MAF sensor. Also push in this here for your connector for your MAF and unplug the MAF. And now you should be able to disassemble all of this. Once you get that removed, you have all this beautiful space. Now we move down to the lower boot, and there's some more clamps right down there that we need to loosen up. Alright, so I found out that if you actually pull up on this here, it actually plugs right into the boot. You don't have to pull the two hoses individually. Just pull on this. It's got ribs on it, so you kind of wiggle it, and then this will come right out of that boot. And that'll be the easier way of doing that. And then make sure you're labeling any connectors or hoses that you're taking apart. Make sure you label them, so when you're all done, you remember where it goes. So like I wrote MAF on this one. I put air boot on this one. This way, it'll make your life a lot easier when it comes to putting things together, because you're going to have a lot of disconnected electrical connectors and hoses by the time we're done. And some of them look identical. So label as you go. Alright, now we should be able to pull this boot off if I have it loose enough. And there, that came off. Alright, once you get that boot off, we'll have a lot more room now, and that's going to give us access to the resonance valve right here, and then we'll be able to then work our way down to the throttle body itself. Now, the throttle bodies, the M54 is electrical, so there isn't an actual like throttle wire thing. That's going to be more for your 4-cylinder engines. They're going to have that old school throttle cable. We have an electric system for the M54 engine. I think the M52tu 6, like the straight 6 version, I think that's the same one as well. But just keep in mind that depending on what engine you have, you're either going to have an electrical throttle body, or you're going to have that in-house wire, like throttle wire setup. So your disassembly will be different. You're going to have the one connector here for the resonance valve. You just gotta pinch in the piece right there. You pinch it, and then you kind of wiggle and pull and then that will come off. Make sure you label this so you know what that goes to. And then you're going to need to get a T40 screw out right here, and then there's a second one down underneath. So you're going to need to have a star tool, your Torx bit, set to get those T40s out. All right, now that the two T40 screws are out, it should come right off pretty simple. A little wiggle, and then that comes out. And there we have it, and that's another little sensor for the airflow, I believe. Now, some of you, this might get pretty built up with some crud, so you might need to do a little cleaning on yours. I'm going to screw those screws right back in, so that way I don't misplace those. Alright, so now that we have that off, go ahead and plug that up. Don't want any stuff getting in there. I went ahead now and I also drained the water out of my cooling system. We're going to go ahead and get the rest of this air intake part here off. There are some hose clamps here holding this on. So we got to get the rest of this off so we can actually access the throttle body. So go ahead and just take off these clamps. And of course, somebody decided to put mine on upside down. Genius. So I'm going to have a little bit more of a struggle getting mine off. Two clamps. There's this little clamp. And then there's the big one holding this, like this one right here. There's a big one like this, right back there. A 6mm socket will fit on the screws for the clamps. So if you're not able to fit a screwdriver in there, see if you can get a 6mm socket, and then you might be able to work them loose that way. I wasn't able to pull it off by hand, so I got a little pry tool, and I got it in here. And I've been kind of prying it up against here, and that loosened it enough to where now I can pull it off. It's loose. That was on there really good, so the little pry tool really made that possible. Now that I got that out of the way, I should be able to reach back here with my socket wrench to get that other clamp loose. Yeah, unfortunately they have them in upside down, so it just makes it a little bit more difficult. Another thing to note, depending on what engine you have, your dipstick might be in the front. If you have a model where the dipstick is in front, follow it down, and it's going to be bolted with like a 13mm, I think. It'll be bolted with a 13mm nut, kind of close to the engine mount down there. Mine's in the back, and it goes straight down out of the way, so I don't think I will have to remove my dipstick. But just take that note if yours is near the front of the engine, so that way you can remove the dipstick, because that's going to get in your way later on. Alright, I was able to get the boot off the rest of the way, so the pain, because as you can see these are upside down. What I might do is flip these around, and I'll see if it's possible to tighten these in that position with them right side up like that, the way that I feel like they should have been. It's possible they had them upside down because maybe they couldn't fit anything in with it right side up. But I'm going to flip mine around, and that way when I go to put it back on, I'll see if I can get them on that way. Now we can go and work on getting that throttle body off. On the engine you have, your throttle body setup will differ if you have an early model M52 or a 4-cylinder engine. This step is going to deviate from mine some. We'll have some more T40s right here, a T40 down here. These are the ones that we took off earlier. I just put them back in so I wouldn't lose them. So below this one, there's a T40 here and a T40 there that we need to remove. There's the, can't really see it, but there's the idle air valve connector, I think is what that is. The idle air connector right here. You just push that in and pull that one out. Right down here, I'll have another connector I'll have to get, and then I think there's supposed to be 3 10mm somewhere in here. I'm guessing I'll have to get this one, and then there should be one back in here. So I can feel it, and then there should be one behind here, but I have to get this connector out first. I think there's one back there, and then I'll be able to pull my throttle body out nice and easy because mine's electrical. Now, for those of you who don't have an electrical, you're going to have to pull your throttle cable wires and stuff out. So you're going to want to look up, go ahead and research how to do that so you don't break your those real thin, little cables. I mean, I know I have to get this connector down there for the throttle body, on the throttle body housing down here, but I'm thinking I might have to get this here out, potentially this connector as well, and then kind of get all this electrical out of the way. Let me get this connector off, and then I gotta look for the other 10mm bolts that are holding this throttle body on. I know I felt one up here and one down there, so that's the next step. And I've just been using a 1/4-inch drive socket wrench this whole time because it's tight. I'm trying to keep my tools as small as I can. That one's a really long studded screw with a washer on it. So do not lose that little washer. Oh, that's not so hard. Okay, let me show you what I did. That was actually really easy. The connector right here, I wasn't able to push in on this end. So what I did is I took my tool on this side, it snuck it in there, and I just kind of wiggled it, and this whole connector just slid right off. Real easy, just like so. So yeah, once I was able to put this in between this piece right here, it came off. It took like very little strength to just slide it off once this was kind of in between there. So that's the way to go about it, because you're not going to be able to squeeze that. This little curved pick tool is my best friend. Harbor Freight. Like $2 kit. All right. So now that is out of the way, I need to label this, and then I think that other 10mm should be down here somewhere. I'll have to try to look for it or feel for it. All right, so I got it off. So for the throttle body, where your air intake connects, there's the long studded bolt on the top, one on the left, one on the right, and on the bottom is just a 10mm nut. Okay, so there is actually should be 4 of these long stud-like bolts holding this throttle body on. I pulled off 3. I had one on top, and I had like 2 on the sides. So there's one actually up here. I couldn't, it's so tight right there, I didn't realize it was right there. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then of course you had that little nut on the bottom. So make sure you end up taking out 4 of these, and then as long as I don't have any other connectors that are still holding it on, it should just fall right off. Alright, is there a connector on here I missed? Feels like there's something. No, I don't. It's a bracket on a stud. Okay, got it. Man, I had to work for this. This is actually not that difficult to get off. It was just a pain for me because I couldn't find this bolt here. I didn't realize it was there because I got this one and these down here. Like this one's just a stud. So let me put that nut back on there. There's my throttle body. Keep in mind you'll have a gasket on here. I went ahead and I ordered a replacement gasket. So when we get to the point of reassembly, I'm going to tear this gasket off and put a fresh one on. I figure I went through the hassle of taking this thing off. I might as well put all fresh gaskets back on everything so I don't have to worry about coming back and doing that later. This gasket actually looks like it's in really good shape yet, but I'll swap it anyway. peace of mind. But there, the stinking throttle body is off. But yeah, so see, mine's all electrical, so I don't have like throttle cable wires or anything to pull out. So if you have an older model, you'll have to deal with all the throttle cable stuff. That was a pain in the butt, and it didn't have to be, all because I couldn't find that one bolt. But that's off. So what I actually got stuck on, so that way you guys know, is when I pull this electrical piece back, there's this bracket right here that sits on that bottom stud. I just had to get that off that stud. So now that's all disconnected. So I'm going to go grab some paper towel and stuff it where the throttle body connects, so that way nothing gets up in there next. But we did it. We got that part off. So now, if I end up having to get to any other connectors, I'm going to have significantly more room to do so. So like, remember how earlier we had to disconnect the battery jump line right there? Well, that actually connects down under here. If you see that red right there, that's where it is back there. So now that the throttle body's out of the way, I'll be able to disconnect that if I need to. So that'll make that easier, because I'm pretty sure this whole electrical cowl here, I'm probably going to have to get out of the way so I can take the intake manifold off. But throttle body is done. All right, I'm going to try to figure out what else I might need to remove on the side here. And then if we're good, then we'll go and remove the engine cover. And then it's just a matter of dealing with vacuum lines in the back and getting the fuel rail and the injectors out. And I did order replacement O-rings for the injectors, and I got a replacement intake manifold gasket coming as well. I'm not going to be reassembling this stuff today. We're going to do the disassembly today, and then tomorrow I'll actually do the replacement of those water pipes. If you guys want me to make a video of the reassembly process, I'll make a separate video on how to put it back together. Or I can combine that after I get the pipes done. I could put the process of assembly all in that one video. You'll have to leave a comment on this video for the disassembly to let me know if you want to see the reassembly process, just so that way you guys can remember how to do everything in reverse. So you let me know in the comments. All right, I think we got pretty much everything we need. I think there might be a few things I may have missed, but I'll get to them when I get to them. So I know that bolt straight back there, I think that's a 16 millimeter. That's holding on the intake manifold. That's on the bracket that holds the manifold in place on the bottom. So we'll definitely have to get that out, but I'm going to try to get everything on the top and the back done first. And then when I'm ready, then I'll go get that one out. I believe. So the purge valve over here, I think I'm going to have to remove. Let's focus on some of the easier stuff. So I'm going to remove the purge valve right there. We're going to disconnect the crankcase ventilation little tube right here. We'll disconnect that. That's an easy one. We're going to go ahead and get the engine cover off. And I'm looking, I think I might have to disconnect this brake booster line right here. I don't have any crimp tools, so I can't disconnect the hose in like a specific area. So I think I'll have to just pull it out right here. Sorry, it's not focusing because of the lighting, but I think I can just pull it out right here and not have to worry about any of these crimps. So that way the brake booster is disconnected. And then there's going to be, of course, the vacuum lines in the back. And there's going to be a fuel line in the back that I'll have to disconnect. And then, of course, getting all the injectors and all that stuff. We're making good progress. So, yeah, let me go ahead. Easy stuff. Purge valve, CCV, engine cover. And then we'll keep moving from there. And we'll work our way, get the top done, work our way to the back, and then get that bolt. And if there's anything else holding me back, I'll disconnect it as I come to it. So, let's get it. right, let me label that for purge valve. That also goes to the purge valve. Okay, so purge valve's disconnected, and I got everything labeled for that. CCV hose here is disconnected. We're good there. We're going to need to disconnect this sensor up here, and then also pull the oxygen sensors out. All right, so when you get the engine cover off, you're going to want to disconnect the connector here on the vanos. Get this sensor right here on top, as well as the oxygen sensors. These will just pull out nice and easy. So go ahead and get those disconnected. All right, so we got CCV disconnected, vanos one back here, disconnected. This sensor back here, I'm not going to label that one because it's literally in the middle. It's the only thing you can connect to once you put that electrical rail back in. And the oxygen sensors have been slipped out of their clips. There's a zip tie holding it here, so I'll probably have to cut that zip tie. I got to get this electrical piece out. I got to get the fuel rail and the injectors out. So that's next. I managed to get the fuel injector electrical disconnected. So the trick was I had to use my small little pry tool. You could do this with a flathead screwdriver. Just know that if you have cheap screwdrivers, you're just going to bend your screwdrivers because they're not built for prying. So I recommend getting actual little pry bars. You want to pry next to where these connectors are on the fuel rail. And they're actually spring loaded, so it takes quite a bit to pull them apart. So just pry where each connector is until they come loose, and you'll have to slowly kind of twist this so that way it can get past, and so you can get the clearance to get past this line right here, this connecting piece here. And then as you slowly lift and twist it, you can kind of get past that, and you can keep working your way back. But this was a pain. But I got it off, and but yeah, these are all spring loaded, so it takes quite a bit to get those to free. And I didn't break anything, so I'm pleased with that. So just know that that's kind of what you're up against. Now I can access all these bolts right down in here, so I can start getting the manifold off. So I got one here, one here. There's two here, one here, two here, one here. So that's, let's see here, 2, 4, 6, 8, like 10? I'm counting 10. Oh, there is one back there. So I can start getting those off. I'm going to go ahead and get this connector off and out of the way. So I can reach back there and get the fuel line off and the vacuum line off back there. We'll get the other bolt that was down the bottom, and hopefully we can fully disconnect it. Like I said, there is still a chance I'm going to have to yank the brake booster line, but I'm hoping there won't be too many more things I actually have to disconnect. So these nuts right here are actually 11mm, and I do not have an 11mm socket. It looks like I have a 10 and I have a 12. So I'm going to have to add an 11 to my collection. But what I do have is a 7/16. So that's the equivalent of an 11. So if you also do not have an 11mm, as long as you have a 7/16, you're still in business. Now, there was a zip tie in the back here that the oxygen sensors were held on. I did snip that as well. I'm going to have a nice long extension, and we're going to start taking these off. Ooh, those are tight. All right, so the last one is all the way in the back, and in order for me to reach that, this is going to have to come off. So I've taken this off a few times already, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Can't remember if this is a 10. I think it's a 10. Yeah, it's a 10. And these are just nuts that hold these on. So I just screw that nut back on so that way I don't lose it. And move on to the other side. All right. Now I can slide that around. But I'm going to do what I did when I did the valve cover gasket, and I just slid it forward. I didn't actually unhook it from anything. And hopefully that will be good enough. So I'm going to add another extension. Hopefully this is good. Hopefully I won't need a wobble. I hate using those things. Oh, wow, that one was extra tight. But we got it. Get the magnet on it so it doesn't fall down as I continue to de-thread it. Because that one is in a tight spot. I don't want it to fall. So I got all of the nuts off right here. You'll see the washers are still on and there's little grommets underneath. I'm going to reach back here. I'll have to get some lighting. And there's a vacuum line, like a real small little vacuum hose, and then the fuel line back there that we'll have to disconnect. Make sure you have a rag handy when you do that that hard fuel line back there, because some fuel is going to come out. So you just want to be able to catch that so you don't have the stink of gas everywhere. So let's go ahead and get that off. That hose I recently replaced, so that one should come off pretty easily. It shouldn't break. But right there is the vacuum line. That's that new one I put on. This line right here on top. You're just gonna unplug it from back here. And then there's should be a fuel line somewhere that connects to this fuel rail that I gotta find. But yeah, I just got to get that little hose off. I might just disconnect it from the hard line, to be honest, instead of trying to dip around with it back here. And it looks like this one here, this piece here, see, this hose is broken and this came disconnected. This was one that I was trying to replace before and I couldn't reach it. Well, it broke. This actually might be part of that error code I keep getting, that P0440, whatever it was that I was working on. That might coincide with that, because I did replace my my gas cap. I replaced my gas cap and it didn't fix my problem. So that might be why I'm tripping that vacuum line and that little valve thingy there are probably tripping that trouble code. So now I'll be able to fix that once this is off, because I'll be able to flip this over and it'll be an easy fix. Because yeah, I tried doing it before and I just was too tight back there and I gave up. But I can finally take care of it. I'll knock that out. I just gotta find my remainder of my vacuum line there. All right. Anyways, let me try to disconnect that off that hard line, and I think we're good. I'm not gonna fight with it on the other one because I don't want to risk ripping that hose that's brand new. It's tight here. So here's the fuel line here, and then it goes down back there somewhere. So right here's where this hard line is. So right here is that hard line. I disconnected the vacuum line right off of that hard line because that's just the easiest way to go about that. So right there is the fuel line, kind of bends underneath there. If you feel around, if you follow that hard fuel line straight back, there's going to be like a plastic push piece that's going to be your release. You got to push that in. It's going to be a circular plastic release point that goes around the whole hard line there. You push that piece in, and then you pull the hard line towards the fuel rail. So you're going to push in towards you. If you're on the driver's side, if you're in a North American car, if you're on the driver's side, you push that connector in towards you, and then while that's pushed in, you pull the whole hard line towards the passenger side, towards that fuel rail there. So that's going to be the trick. It's very, very tight. I'm struggling to get that fuel line to disconnect in the back one-handed. I might just have to cave in and remove these fasteners and pull the rail up so I can reach it and use both thumbs to get that to release. So there's a chance I might be doing that. One thing I did forget to mention, there's this little pressure release valve right here. Go ahead and screw off this cap. Screw that off. Don't lose that little valve cap. Make sure you have safety glasses on just in case you do still have high pressure. You don't want any fuel shooting into your eye. You're going to get a rag, kind of get it around the area. And what we're going to do is there's this tiny little pin in this valve. Kind of think of like if you're going to pump up a tire, and we're going to push that pin in. So just like on a tire valve, you push the pin in and it releases air. We're going to push that pin in, and that's going to release fuel pressure if there's any still in there. So that way we won't have a lot of fuel shooting out when we disconnect the fuel line. So this is an important step that I almost missed. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm hoping it's already got low pressure and nothing really shoots out of there, but we got to at least make sure. Carefully push down on that little pin. And try to have this surrounded the best I can. Whoa, so there was still high pressure in that system. All right. Now that pressure has been released, I can push in it, nothing's squirting out anymore. So now we're good, but I don't know if that caught on camera, but I had some fuel spout up pretty high. So there was still some high pressure in there. All right, so now we got that out, and we can go ahead and replace that valve cap so we don't lose it. Pressure has been released, because yeah, that would have shot a lot of fuel out the back side had I not remembered to do that part. So good thing we got that now. I'm going to remove the fuel rail. It is possible to not remove it, but I've had enough. It's just too, I don't have enough strength in my, to do it one-handed. Some of you guys might be able to do that one-handed. I can't. So I'm going to take the fuel rail off and pull it up and then release it. I've had enough. I'm wasting too much time. So let's go ahead and get these off. Let's see what size those are. Let's see if they're a 10. They're actually 10s, so good. I'm already preset for a 10. So let's just get these off and get this done with, because I've wasted so much time fighting with this line that enough's enough. Time for me to stop being stubborn and just remove the fuel rail. I did order new fuel injector O-rings anyway, so I'll still be able to replace those. That's 2. Looks like there's just 4 fasteners, 4 10mm little bolts holding the rail on, so it's not the end of the world to take it off. I was just being stubborn to be stubborn, I suppose. Now I should be able to pull the injectors out. Now it would have been advisable to take the fuel rail off before removing the nuts that are holding the manifold on, because they're pulling up together now. There we go. This blasted thing is so always in my darn way. Kind of shove it over there best I can. Okay. Now let's see if I can. And these injectors look pretty dirty and bad, actually. So I pulled my injectors out, and they look kind of crusty. So might be a good idea for me to clean these, because look at, pretty gummed up in there as well. So when I get this manifold off, it'll be a good idea for me to spray some cleaner in there and get that crap out of there. It's just a pain. So I'm still trying to figure out how am I going to get that blasted fuel line in the back. I was hoping I could pull the rail up and do it, but it doesn't seem to have enough slack for that to happen. So I'm still going to be struggling, it seems. Now I do have a rag down behind there. I reached back behind and I took that one rag I had and I laid it down. So as I'm fiddling with that fuel line, if any fuel squirts out, it'll hit the rag. So I'm not trying to hold both at the same time. I've been fighting with it quite a bit. I finally got the fuel line up here high enough to where I'll be able to show it to you all on video now. So you'll see it has that plastic piece right here. It's the release mechanism, and the trick, which I haven't been able to succeed at yet. Sorry, this light is falling down and now it won't sit still. Okay, so the trick that I have been failing at so far is you have to pull the whole line towards where the fuel rail is. And while you're pulling that forward, you have to use your thumb and forefinger to push this plastic release in, and then you'll be able to pull the line apart. That's how it works. I've just been having a heck of a time getting a good enough grip and enough strength to actually get that to compress. I found that if I reach, so I have my dipstick in the back here. I found that if I reach straight in right here, I can get my whole arm underneath and I can grab on with my thumb and forefinger. But no matter how hard I pinch, I cannot get that plastic piece to compress. And I just can't get it. But I've been able to pull it up higher so I can see it better. But yeah, the struggle is still trying to get that plastic release to compress in and actually release. It just, no matter how hard I pull on the line and I push it in, it won't actually compress in and release. And so that's been my struggle. And I've wasted over an hour trying to get that part to release. So buckle up, friends. When you get to this part, there's a good chance you're gonna know my pain, because this part here it's a big struggle. I'm having such a hard time getting it off. So best of luck to you. I finally got it separated. I had to have my husband come out and help me out, because I was able to compress the little connector in, but I wasn't able to press and hold it in and pull the line apart at the same time. So I had him come out, so I was able to press it in, and then I had him pull the hard line here out, and it's finally disconnected. Here's the hard line connected to the valve, excuse me, the fuel rail, and then down there is the fuel line. So we got it. What a pain that was. I'll admit, I spent over an hour trying to get it by myself. So yeah, if you have somebody else that can help you, it's in such a tight spot that it's beneficial to have a buddy that to pull while you push the connector in, have them pull the line out, because it's just, I was not able to do both at the same time with my limited amount of space you can have for your hand in there. So yeah, get a buddy for that part if you can. You know, have a friend come over. If you have a spouse or somebody, just somebody. All right, well, we finally got that part disconnected. So now I'm going to go in and get the other nut or bolt, whatever it is, that's under there on that bottom bracket out. And then I'm going to try pulling the manifold off. There's possibly some other stuff that's still connected, but I want to see how far I can get it out, and then maybe see where things are connected, and then maybe I can figure out what else I got to remove, because it's very difficult to see. But the hardest thing by far was getting that fuel line off. The throttle body I lost a lot of time on, but that's only because I didn't know about the other bolt. Once I got that bolt out of there, it came off real easy. So the throttle body is easy as long as you know how many bolts you got to remove. But that fuel rail, man, what a pain in the rear that was. All right, friends. Let's get this rest of this done. It's hot. I have had sweat dripping off my face. I got to get this off so I can be done for today. And we'll come back tomorrow and actually do the repair. Because, wow, what a chore this has been. So if you're looking down in there, here's the bottom of the throttle body right here where it connects. Straight back right here is a bracket that I think that's holding the manifold on from the bottom. So go ahead and remove that nut right there. Okay, so the fastener right there, that's actually a 16 millimeter. So go ahead and get that off. If you do not have a 16 millimeter, a 5/8 will also work. All right, I got that flange nut off the bottom bracket down there. Now that one was heavily torqued on, so I had to use a breaker bar on that one, so just be wary. That one's really tight. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and pull that fuel rail out so I don't break these injectors. Went through all that effort getting this thing pulled apart without breaking it. Let's not break it now. So let's get that out of the way. Now I haven't had any issues with the fuel, so my injectors I think might be all right. I think I just got to do some cleaning because these tips look really good. So I might just have to do some cleaning, and I think I might be able to still use these because I haven't had any issues with them, so that should work. I'm going to pull that rag out that I put down there to catch fuel. Grab that fuel line, and I'm gonna kind of tuck it up over here so hopefully it doesn't get snagged on anything. We are really close to being able to pull out the intake manifold. Now I was hoping I could do it without removing my dipstick tube, but when I tried pulling it out earlier, it ended up putting a lot of pressure on it and I got stuck. I didn't realize, but if you look down, let me zoom you guys in and kind of move stuff around. You push this electrical box up, you see this bolt right down here, that nut? That's a 13 millimeter nut, and that actually mounts the dipstick tube to the engine. So I forgot that. So that's where mine is. I had mentioned earlier that older model cars might have their bolt down, because if you have it in the front, your bolt would be down near the engine mount. Mine has a bracket that goes to the actual engine itself, so I gotta take that off. And then there's a oil return hose right here that connects to the dipstick tube, and that actually goes up move this out of the way, to the CCV right there. I'm going to try to keep that hose intact and just take the tube. Once I get that bracket unbolted, the tube will just pull straight up and come out of the oil pan. Now there is an O-ring on that, so if you do remove your dipstick tube, you will have to get a replacement O-ring. Otherwise, you're going to have a very severe oil leak from your oil pan down there if you don't replace that. So I went ahead and ordered one. So I still have about another week worth of parts coming in between additional like O-rings and things that I didn't realize I needed at the time. So I won't be able to put this back together right away. Another thing that I did not mention, for those of you who are doing this on a model that is not the Z3, if you're doing this on like I think the 325, the 330s, and the later model 5 series, you have like a plastic like shield right along in this area here that's got a couple clips in it. You got to turn those clips and pull that shield out because that's going to get in your way as well. So make sure you remove that shield. If you can get this out before you undo this electrical box that's here, your life will probably be easier than mine right now because this box keeps falling in my way. I went ahead and I took the 13mm nut out like you saw. I did have to use a wobble tool to just kind of get in there enough to break it free, and then I was able to take it out by hand. And now my dipstick pipe, I'm able to move it to the side. So I'm thinking I might be able to leave it in. I did not pull up and dislodge it from the oil pan. It's still in there. So I can now at least move this to the side. So I think we're okay there. And what I'm going to try to do, there is also a zip tie right back here holding these wires in right here. You'll have to follow it up. You'll see the zip tie. Cut that. And what I'm going to try to do is pull this out, and I will try to flip it over and disconnect that oil return line that's on the bottom of the CCV that's attached to the dipstick tube itself. So that way, hopefully, I won't have to actually remove the tube. So let me go ahead and let's try it and see if it works without having to fully remove it. Just get yourself some cutters and to get that zip tie out of there. There we go. That's going to actually help free up your injector wire harness here. So they'll be able to move that around better when it comes to moving this out. There's going to be another connector for this harness, but you're not going to be able to get to it until you pop the manifold off, and then you'll be able to unplug it, and then you can completely get that harness out of the way. Just be careful that nothing falls down inside the ports when you get this off. Right now I'm hitting this cowl. I'm going to try to raise that up like so. Okay, so I got it away from the ports, and I do see some leaves. I'm going to quickly stuff those ports, so as I'm fiddling, nothing goes in there, because that'll be a very bad day that I don't want to have. So stuff your ports quick. There, that'll give me peace of mind so nothing falls in there, because you might have some dirt or maybe a loose fastener that you dropped or something. You don't want nothing going in there. I'm definitely stuck on something. Okay, so now that I kind of tipped it away, excuse the sun has moved on me here, but I can see the line right here. This goes to that purge valve. I don't think that's holding me up. You see the CCV is right there. This here is that oil line. Okay, I think I see my problem. So the bracket that holds the bottom of the manifold in place is actually hitting my water pipe. And I'm getting stuck on it there. Got to be careful so I don't snap that pipe. But it looks like that's where I'm snagged. So I'm going to have to just keep trying to get that out of the way best I can. Okay, that's free. Okay, I have a connector here. It looks like it's holding me in. So there's actually, right here, there's some electrical that's connected to the actual mounting bracket. That's definitely holding me in. So let me go ahead and get that. And then if you look, right there's that other connector I told you about. That's for the back of that electrical harness right there. So you'll have to unsnap that once you get that pulled away enough. And that's just another one of those pinch connectors. So let me grab those two connectors, and then I think I might be free now. Those you wouldn't be able to get until you move the manifold over. All right. And now that's free. I think that CCV line down there I have to unplug. So I'm going to do that. So if you look, that plug here I think might be holding me back. So I'm going to squeeze that in on the sides where those little grooves are on each side. Squeeze that in and pull, and that should disconnect from the CCV. All right. That's now off. So now my dipstick is fully off. That won't give me more resistance. And that means I didn't have to pull it out of the oil pan, and I didn't have to cut any hoses or anything like some guys do. Yeah. Or at least freer. Now what's got me? Let's see what else is holding me back. Okay, so there's a connector right here where your vacuum lines are. This is where that little black and white little valve is. There's a connector here, so I'll just push that in and unplug that. And now I'm free from that harness. All right, now we can officially pull out. Ah, dang it, I'm still stuck. Hold on. It has to do with this brake piece here. So right now, my brake booster line is what I'm stuck on. It connects back here, and then it's bracketed here, and then it runs all the way under. There's this bracket here that's in the way, of course. And right there where you can see that crimp point is where it connects right there. So it's not really a thing that I can remove through here because I don't have a crimp tool to fix this part. So my only option is to pull this brake booster line from right here and to keep it all intact on the manifold itself. And then that's the last thing holding me in. But yeah, if you didn't know, there's your starter. So if you ever have to replace your starter, you'll have to remove your intake manifold to get to it. So keep note of that. Not fun. All right, well, let me go ahead and I'm going to get that brake booster out, and then we're going to yank this out, and then we'll go over stuff. Okay, so what we're going to want to do now, this here, so for those of you who aren't sure, so you got your master cylinder and your reservoir here. This is your brake booster here. This is actually just a vacuum line. So if you won't have to worry about, you know, your brake fluid leaking or anything like that, you can just pull your brake booster vacuum line right out. Go ahead and pump the brake pedal a couple times to try to release some of the vacuum that might be there, and it should hopefully pull out quite easily. So let me go ahead and pump the brakes and give this a yank, and then we'll have this blasted thing out. Okay, I was able to pull mine out, and I will admit it was quite stubborn to get it out. I found that if I gripped it this way and pull it straight towards the front of the car while kind of wiggling it around, it eventually came off. It took a lot of effort, but it's just a plastic nozzle that plugs in there. So now we're disconnected. Now, finally, as long as there's nothing else that comes up, we should be able to completely remove this intake manifold.
Yeah, you guessed it. I was still stuck. Remember back when we were taking off the intake boot? This small little line here on this nozzle? You actually need to unplug that as well.
Okay, we have the intake manifold officially removed, and this was such a pain, let me tell you. So I do want to make a correction on something that I was mistaken on. When I was removing the nuts that hold the top of the manifold down, I had originally thought that these had the same washer and grommet system that the valve cover had, and that's not true. If I move over here, you'll see it's actually built in to the manifold, so you will not have to worry about replacing this. So as long as these didn't snap off, they're not going to come off. Okay, so you don't have, that's one less thing now you have to worry about falling off while you're doing this process, and you don't have to replace those. Okay, so let me go over all of the potential things you may want to address once you have your intake manifold removed. Now, once you get your intake manifold off, there's going to be a number of things that you're going to have a lot easier access to. So if there are things that you had on your plan to get fixed, or you know, or you have discovered that you have a problem while you'll take the manifold off, go ahead and address those now, because there's a lot of things that are compacted between the manifold and the firewall, as well as underneath the manifold, that are incredibly frustrating and difficult to replace while it is still installed on the engine. So things to consider. Of course, once you remove the intake manifold, the gasket has to be replaced. This is a one-time use gasket, so make sure you replace that. I have mine on order, so hopefully next week I'll have all my gaskets and things, and I'll be able to put everything back together. So get your gasket taken care of. And then on the bottom, you actually have your CCV. Now, let me get a little closer so you can see. But this is your CCV. There's that one oil line that I detached right here. That went to the dipstick tube. And this is the one that attaches up on the valve cover. This is something that is very, very important for your engine. BMW actually made a pretty ingenious design when they created the CCV, PCV unit here that goes on the M54 engines, as well as the M52, I think the TUBs or something like that. So a lot of guys, they have it in their mind that it's better to do a delete, and they'll do like this oil catch can thing. Do not do that. Do not do that. Okay? Anyone tries to tell you that that's going to be better than having the CCV, they are lying to you. Okay? Do not do that. The CCV, it has a very special, so this part here that your oil line connects to, this actually has a cyclone feature in it. And it does something an oil catch can cannot do. And what it does is it separates the oil, which is what a catch can does. But on top of that, it has like the cyclone like barrel in there that is designed to separate oil. It separates moisture and gases that have gotten expelled from the engine are going to go through there, and it's going to be able to separate all that, combust what it needs to combust, so that way your engine can keep the proper vacuum it needs and not go under too much pressure, and it is able to keep moisture from dripping down into your oil pan. If you switch over to this oil catch can thing that people think is such a bright idea for these engines, what happens is where the valve cover is, what the guys will do is they'll put a different hose on it that is shrinking down the diameter, and they'll take that to the oil catch can, and then they'll route that around to the back and put it into a vacuum, which is even smaller yet. And what that does is that increases the amount of vacuum your engine has, and it's also choking off your engine, because you're taking an engine that's trying to push out a lot of fumes and things through to breathe. You're now putting it through a very, very small hole, and you're basically giving your engine asthma in a sense. It can't breathe. This is then going to create high pressure on your engine, and you're going to damage gaskets, and all kinds of things can go wrong by doing that. And plus, that oil catch can, it doesn't have that cyclone feature, so all of the moisture that's going to be in those catch cans are usually made out of cheap aluminum. And if you know anything about condensation, when you have that aluminum, the moisture builds up on that, and it's going to flow straight down the catch can on the inside, and then it's going to go right down that drain hose that's on there, and all that water is now mixing in to your oil pan, and it's getting into your oil and it's just ruining the whole consistency of your oil, and that's going to do damage to your piston rings and all kinds of things. So do not do the DIY oil catch can CCV delete thing that you'll see a lot of dudes talk about doing, especially you'll see a lot of YouTubers promote that. Do not do that. It's going to cause damage to your engine, okay? Do not do that. The CCV is specially designed for these engines so that like I said, it's going to separate the oil, separate fumes, and keep the vacuum the way that it needs to be, and allow the engine to breathe properly, so that way you're not going to have to worry about having too much pressure inside the engine and then damaging things. This is a fantastic system. A lot of guys hate it simply because of the fact that it's underneath the intake manifold, and so it's just a big frustrating pain to have to get to it when it's time to replace it. But this unit will last a long time. You can usually get 100,000 miles out of one of these before you need to change it. So yeah, it's frustrating. You're going to lose a whole day trying to get it off, but it's going to last you a very long time, and it's a lot safer for your engine than an oil catch can. So don't do that delete, and while you have this off, just check it. See if there's cracks on it. Look at the hoses. Kind of squeeze on the hoses. If you hear any cracking or anything like that, then your hoses are ready to be replaced. So then just go ahead and replace your CCV system, so that way you know it's done, it's out of the way, and you'll get another 100,000 miles out of it without having to worry about anything breaking. So it's just something that you can easily get to, and it's a very important piece that BMW engineered it's just nothing else can replicate that. There's no aftermarket product out there at this time that can reproduce what the CCV and PCV like unit does. All right, so this, you need to have this on. It's just replace it with another stock system. All right, don't do any weird modifications. It's a bad idea. Okay. Also, another thing is when you look at the rear, this is the part that is trapped between the back of the engine and the firewall, and is where all your vacuum stuff is. This stuff is a pain in the rear to get to. So let me get you closer here so you guys can see. So now keep in mind, I had this upside down. Okay, the actual correct orientation, it would look like this. I have it upside down, okay? Now there is this vacuum check valve right here. You're going to want to replace this. This thing, it has a tendency to fail over time, and it is a devil to get off. I had replaced a lot of my vacuum lines in the past, and my plan was to replace this, and I could not get it off this bracket in such a tight place because it's underneath the manifold. So like I said, this is the correct orientation. So it's underneath, and you have like your heater core right here and your firewall, and you can barely get your hand in there to get to it. It's just I couldn't get it, so I gave up on it. But now that I have this off, I still have the replacement part. I'm gonna replace that out. This is my brand new vacuum line I had put on it, and this is what feeds into your secondary air pump. And then there's this vacuum line here that I was not able to replace at the time. This one here is all broken and brittle, so I'm going to break these off, and I'm going to replace that. And that little white and black little vacuum valve, little check valve, goes right there. I'm going to replace that as well. So both those check valves I'm going to replace, and I'm going to replace the rest of these vacuum lines, and that will hopefully fix that trip code I've been getting, that P0440, I think it was P0440. This is something that could be contributing to that same engine fault code. I'll clear my code and see if it comes back. If it comes back, there's something else that could be tripping it. It's one of those codes that is really, really hard to diagnose because there are a plethora of things that can cause that. So, but since you have this off, replace those check valves because it's just too difficult to do it while this is installed. So get that taken care of as well. And that's pretty much everything that you would have to worry about, you know, when it comes to this. You know, if you notice that maybe your fuel line or anything, your vacuum line here, maybe if that's bad, you can replace that. But just check all your, you know, all of your hoses and things. Replace what you can if you need to replace anything. And then that's it for what's actually attached to the manifold itself. Let's go back over to the engine bay and we'll go over all the things that you'll have better access to once it's off. So if you know that something is maybe going to be due on your maintenance schedule soon, you can just do it now and not have to deal with the hassle down the road. Let's go see. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like on your car. Now keep in mind, depending on what model car you have, things may look a little different. But for my Z3, this is what it's going to look like once that intake manifold is gone. And the reason why I took mine off is because the coolant and the water pipes right here, these have a tendency to go bad. They crack and they fall apart inside the engine block, and they cause all kinds of coolant leaks and problems. So I'm doing a complete coolant system refresh. And part of doing that, a lot of people, they kind of just focus on the front part and they disregard the most important stuff, which is right here, and it's these two pipes. So I'm going to be replacing these two pipes in another video. So now, since you have this off, replace these pipes. You have to drain the coolant before you take those off. Okay, do that. If you have oil leaks and you haven't gotten around to fixing them, possible oil leaks are going to be the oil supply line right here for your vanos. I recently replaced mine, and let me tell you, it was a pain to get underneath here to tighten this with my manifold on. I got it done, but it was very difficult to do that. I had to get some special tools. So if you haven't replaced your supply line, this is the perfect time. You can easily get to it and get it on there and torque it down proper. So go ahead and replace that. That's a very common oil leak issue on here, as well as you'll have access to your oil filter housing gasket. It'll be a lot easier for you to replace that. So if you have an oil leak there, go ahead and get that addressed as well. Of course, your starter's right here. So if you notice you've been having issues, you have access. You can go ahead and, take care of your starter if that's something that you need to address as well. It'll be easy access. So those are just some of the big things. So yeah, water coolant pipes, swap those out for sure. You don't have to do the starter, but if you are noticing that there's issues with it, then this is the time to fix that. This supply line, replace it. It's an inexpensive thing, and it's so easy to get to it now. I would say just replace it. And of course, I said that gasket for the oil filter housing, get that one. Now, you'll have to do an oil change for that because all of the oil from your filter and all that's going to come out. So just know that if you're going to do that gasket, you're going to have to do a complete oil change and make that a whole process. If you're going to do engine mounts, you can easily get to the engine mount right there with this off. It's still going to be a tight squeeze to get to the one over there, but the engine mounts are another thing that you should consider replacing. They are old, and it's just better to just replace them because more than likely you have the original ones on and they're now 20 years old. So I would highly recommend getting these engine mounts done. So those are actually, I do have new engine mounts. Those are on my list of things I want to do because now that I have less stuff in here, it's going to be lighter for me to lift the engine, and it'll be less things that could pinch and get busted while I lift it. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be doing here real soon that I'll be showing you all. So yeah, also if you're doing a coolant a refresh like I am, another thing to consider is your reservoir right here if you have one. Older models are going to have like an overflow tank connected that you'll have to replace. Mine doesn't have the overflow tank. I just have the reservoir. These have a tendency over time, they crack and they'll start leaking. Mine is in really good shape yet, so I think I can get away with cheating out and not changing that. Unfortunately, you can only get these in plastic, so right now on a mission to get rid of as much plastic as I can. This is something, unfortunately, that they only have in plastic. But so this is easy to get to, so I could always change that out later. Another thing is your overfill line right here. These tend to break. It's just some tubing here, some rubber hose here, and then it's a hard plastic line right here that's custom made to go all the way around. These go bad and these leak. Honestly, I wouldn't even deal with this system. It gets in the way of everything, especially if you have to keep taking your air box out. I would recommend, this is me, you can do what you want to do. You can either put a replacement one of these back in, or just get some rubber tubing like this and just run it straight to here and clamp it, and you're good. You can easily take the tubing and route it right around here and tuck it behind here real nice, and then you won't have this ugly thing going right across here like that. You can actually clean up your engine bay a bit more, and your tubing is going to be a lot more flexible than this hard line right here that can snap and crack and break. So something to consider. This you can just do at any time because it's easy to get to, but I'm looking at it, so I'm bringing it up. So yeah, there you go. And then also you'll have access back here now too. So if you're having any issues with anything leaking back here, you can go ahead and replace this stuff here as well if you need to. You know, you can get all of these coolant hoses here replaced. Got this one here, and there's this one down here. So you have easy access. Go ahead and replace those hoses. All of this is coolant related. So this, you got this is a coolant hose. This is a coolant hose. This one back here is a coolant hose. Of course, we have the two pipes I brought up earlier. This is the time, if check those hoses out and replace them. And so that way your problems won't be, because the last thing you want is coolant leaking right here on your starter. You got, this is where your battery connects to it, and you don't want coolant and stuff leaking right here. That'd be bad. So if you notice your pipes, or excuse me, your hoses are looking pretty bad, swap those out while you have the opportunity. All right, that pretty much covers everything I can think of off the top of my head that would be a good idea to replace. So yeah, just go over all of your hoses and things of that nature. All right, my friends, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day or night to watch this video. I hope I helped you out. There's a lot of videos out there on how to remove the intake manifold between different models of BMWs, and there's going to be a lot of deviations between those, and I couldn't find any really for the Z3, so I wanted to do one specifically for the Z3, at least the inline 6 version, to help you guys out. But my steps that I did are going to apply to a lot of different BMW models, so you know, there will be some different placement, but overall, this is going to be beneficial to a lot of you, regardless if you have a Z3 or not. So I hope this helped you out. Please, if it did, you know, leave a comment on things that you liked about the video or questions you might have about this process. I'm going to be making a separate video. I have grease all over my face, but I'm going to be making a separate video to show you how to replace those water and coolant pipes. So that's going to be next on the docket. I'm going to be doing those motor mounts as well. That'll be on the docket. I will also make a separate video on how to reassemble everything, because I haven't really seen any videos showing how to put things back together. Everyone shows how to take it apart, and no one shows you how to put it back together. And taking things apart is way easier than putting things back together. So I'll make sure to cover that. And in that video, when I make it, I will, at the end of that video, I'm going to go over the cost of what it cost me personally to replace the things that I replace. That way you have kind of an idea of what you're looking at. And this is going to include any additional things that maybe broke while I was doing this, or things that I went ahead and changed while I had the opportunity. So just keep all that in mind. And yeah, so thank you guys. Hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends, share this stuff out. It really goes a long way. And I'll catch you on my next video. So we got plenty more projects to come. Go ahead. You can also check me out on Instagram at CoolCatTerri. And yeah, you know, good luck. And I'll catch you real soon. Take care, all.